we understood, and for the Prime Minister, even in his communication to Parliament when he introduced the resolution, had indicated there would be people working in the core project, Bahamians working in the core project, up to 2,500. And so we thought, therefore, that some of the things he said, obviously, his memory failed him. Some was just sheer politics to try and muddy up the fact that Dr. Nottage, myself, and Vincent Peake served in the PLP government. We don't back away from a day of it. All right? And that today the Prime Minister is in a position where, if you take the dictum that I gave you, governments must always be mindful of the current status of the macroeconomic situation facing them, and their decisions ought to be directed and motivated on that basis, because the interest of the people must be served. And here we have a country where unemployment is approaching 20% in some parts of the country. We really don't know, and where there is a compelling urgency to make the right decision. And my final point on this, where I open for questions, is that we wanted to work with the government, to give the government the benefit of our collective expertise in the opposition, to bring about a situation where we could go to the Chinese together and discuss with the Chinese together a development that would recognize the need for foreign labor, but also recognize concurrent with it, as we had in our own agreements, the absolute necessity to give any Bahamian who's qualified to work on that site an opportunity to work on that site. That's what we want. We wanted to discuss with the government all the ways of, we weren't discriminating against the Chinese when we were questioning and determining about the mortgage and reverting to the Chinese if there's a default. We wanted to be very clear in our thinking so we could communicate to the Bahamian public that we were thorough and that we took everything into consideration. And that's how a country with the greatest respect should operate. And once the Prime Minister decided he wants to bring it to Parliament, I am really surprised that he decided to attack the leader of the PLP, to attack the PLP, and therefore drawing a division throughout this. Maybe it's the reaction to the fact, and I should have told you, that the PLP decided that if it were the government, it would not have entered into a road building contract where 200 Chinese came to build the corridor from the airport. In fact, it would have used Bahamians to do it, even if it had to borrow at a higher rate of interest. That was a decision we made, because the government of Bahamas is different to the private sector. And our position on Baha Mar, right, will have taken a different route to our decision on what the government of Bahamas should do. Because what we did was, even though the Argentinians had a contract, we went out and got Bahamas Hot Mix and Stanley Bethel to joint venture the Tonic Darling Highway and the corridor from AFRB School to Robinson Road, demonstrating how we would go about doing things. And that decision that we made was simply an affirmation of what our policy was in that regard. When he spent $100 million renovating the Sheraton and putting a new brand on it, he then spent $36 million renovating the Wyndham and the casino, making $136 million, an amount larger than probably the first phase of Kersner, phase one of Kersner. But he's done that and he's spent it. Whether I like him or don't like him, the reality is there is evidence of their commitment to make this work. Now we have to be satisfied, obviously, okay, in the final analysis, and the government has to be satisfied. I don't know how my colleagues will be able to make any decision where they don't have access to all the information they need to have. They don't have access to expertise. So no one can walk into this Parliament up there and say, this is what we think should happen. We have to be able to say, government, go and do your job.
So listen, what do you say to people who argue that the project should have been approved, I guess,
What do I say?
to people who argue that the project should have been approved under your
The project was approved under my administration.
I mean,
And listen now, no, and I can tell you, right up to the 4th of April, and then the 9th of April, we were arguing over whether or not we would close Skyline Drive. The Progressive Liberal Party said it would not close Skyline Drive, and the FLM has. But and the FLM said they'll close it when you're up 100 feet up above grade. But we said we would prefer to have an overpass or an underpass because of the traffic situation in the Bahamas. And that's what delayed us. We were not prepared to give in on a matter simply for the political advantage of being able to say we did the agreement. We wanted to stay with what the best interests would be for the Bahamian people, and we stayed with the best interests. And when it came to the request made of me on two matters, right, a request was made of me to sign off on the deal before the general elections, and general elections were 3 weeks away. I refused to sign off. One was on the privatization, that they wanted me to put in place where I would lock the Bahamas government into it. And I made a decision that I couldn't do so a week before the general election, but that the decision had been made by the Cabinet of the Bahamas for privatization for $260 million. And a privatization committee that included both unions of the BEC and other distinguished persons. And this FNM government stopped, reviewed, and cancelled that and had to pay monies in London in arbitration for their mistake. And now they're dealing with Cable Wireless, who is a company that I thought all the governments of the Bahamas at one stage, right, has said we were not going to consider. And he's now said, and he may be right, right, we don't know the deal yet and we don't know what is being offered, but we know that we left $260 million guaranteed, confirmed on the table, and we'll see what he comes up with.
49%. 49%.
And that's right. We were selling, we were selling 49%, and they're selling 51%. And we're told that they have a real problem with the amount, but we'll see. And we'll have a real problem with the amount. So, you know, really, in essence, to those persons who say what we should have done, we feel, and looking back at it, that if we had the level of cooperation on all sides of the negotiating table, it could have been signed. The FNM came in at a time when all of the things were in place, and they decided to review the matter. The Prime Minister came back and told you he changed it. You know what's interesting about the change? The Prime Minister said he gave Baha Mar the option. Stay with the 2006 agreement and the $1 billion proposal. But if you open this now up, I will change what the PLP has agreed with you. If you want me to open this up and come to a supplemental agreement. He changed it. You remember he took the gaming board premises out? They were supposed to replace the gaming board premises. Baha Mar, I think, had tremendous relief over that because it's going to cost them more money to be able to replace those buildings, the development mic and gaming board. And they had a relief. But he took them out. He changed it. We were selling for $100,000 an acre, 70 acres of land for the back of the house. They wanted to put it where the park will be, and we said we were not going to approve it to put it where the park will be. And so we went to Gladstone Road, and we were going to sell for $100,000 an acre, 70 acres of land. Government come in behind, and quite rightly, they said, okay, that's our view is, we don't want that, we're going to change it. You know what I asked? If Hubert Ingraham was so convinced at that time that it was wrong to sell fee simple, why didn't he then take that position right there and then when he reopened the negotiations? He changed what he wanted to change. And he bragged about it. And I said, it therefore must be assumed that when he came to Parliament with his supplemental agreement, he was in full consent with it. But now he tries to put politically on us, trying to take advantage of Bahamian sensitivities and sensibilities on this question of land, okay, that we made this mistake. And that is, you know, you could speak the truth in all sorts of different ways to the point where you start to wonder whether it is the truth and how it is being put. All right? So, and look here, and just rising out of that, how government. Any government that comes behind another government, especially in the circumstances his government came to power, it's easy to get a developer who's put all his money into the ground and say, my boy, if you want me to approve this, I can change this. I can change that. That's why they had to. And that's why Caesars became concerned, because they saw the land matters being changed. And they then lost confidence in this whole process.